Welcome to Enlightened Evolution,
I'm Cay.
and I'm Christina.
We're here to discuss the ebb and flow of our soul's healing and transformation through self-reflection, choosing intentionally, honoring thyself, and following your inner guide.
Thank you for joining this safe space with us. Welcome to Enlightened Evolution. We are so happy that you're here with us this week. We hope you are doing well. Today, we are talking about a hot topic, anger. How to ease your own anger, how to honor your anger, and how to handle anger with others. Kay, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well this morning, just trying to figure out why the sky is so angry today. Yesterday, it was 70 degrees here in Michigan in February, and last night we had a tornado warning, and now it's like 30. So that's nice.
All over the place.
All over the place. So I think that's a good comparison to anger today.
Certainly.
So, fear warns us about danger. Grief tells us to seek support. Joy tells us that we should continue doing whatever it is that makes us feel good. And anger's the same. It tells us that an injustice is being enacted or that we need to take action to ensure survival for our body and our integrity. Do you agree with that? Are you angry? I didn't ask you how you're doing this morning. I'm sorry. I just jumped right into it.
Not angry about that. But the first thing I have in my notes, I had a interesting relationship with anger most of my life because I felt a lot of anger from others. So I had this very negative connotation with anger. And only recently have I learned to honor my anger because, like you just mentioned, it's an indicator for us that maybe something injustice happening or there's a trigger that we have in ourselves that we need to work on. For so long, I very much suppressed my anger. And now I see it as this, my therapist sometimes calls it your divine anger, especially
Oh, I
when
love
you have
that.
anger towards social injustices and things like that, or injustices towards yourself. It's this emotion that pops up. It's something we're meant to feel. It's not something we're supposed to suppress down and squash out and forget that it ever popped up. It's there as like our warning system. You just
Mhm.
recently had a tornado warning system in your area. Very much like that. It sometimes can be loud and abrupt and wake you up out of your sleep.
Yeah.
But it's meant to really bring our attention to what is going on in the current moment. What is your relationship with your anger like?
Oh, I need to learn how to calm down a bit. I think that we're
We all could.
opposite. Yeah, I think I identify with anger as definitely that warning system that says, "Hey, I'm being violated." And for those of us that have suffered from being abused mentally and physically, I think that our threshold for anger is a little bit different because even if in certain moments, and I've gotten much better at this, but after I've suffered from the abuse, after that with anger, it was always, I'm angry, I'm violated. I instantly have to defend myself with my voice, usually just with screaming, not letting other people get the word in, and things like that. I have gotten much better, but I do think that our anger is directly related to a, a violation wound.
And I think a lot of times when it shows up, initially we want to act out of it and we want to push it out. And really, what I'm trying to work on is not acting on it and going
Mhm.
inward and really getting to the root of why I am so angry and what are the next steps I need to take because it's never worked out for me when I just act off of my anger.
No, it's never worked out for me either. And I've dealt with anger from others as well in relationships, which when you're in a romantic relationship and you're dating a man, let's say, and you're a woman, or it could be a same sex relationship, but when someone has physical power over you and they're angry with you, it can be scary. And you do have to suppress your needs. And I think that after you kind of come out of that, you develop this defense mechanism, and which is anger towards others and not allowing yourself to be violated anymore. I wanted to mention what anger is not. It's not a destructive force of violence. Violence is a destructive force of violence. Anger is a motivating force, and there's many options to express your anger. You don't have to be violent, you don't have to scream, you should never have had things thrown at you, or you should have never been screamed at or have been beaten. Acting aggressively should never be a default when you're experiencing anger. It's an emotion, it's not a behavior. So, like you said, going inward, trying to avoid being hostile or aggressive, certainly avoid being violent, and hostility, violence, those are words that describe what people do, and anger is to describe how people feel.
Right. I would say recently, when I started doing internal family system therapy, is when I really started to get in touch with my anger. My mom was a very angry person, and so I, as an adult, made a decision that I didn't wanna be like her, and I never wanted to display anger to others. So, like I said, I suppressed it a lot, and I actually had this internal dialogue with my anger because I was suppressing it so much that it would show up in my dreams as rage of me, like, brutally harming other people in my dreams. So I was like, I need to check inside and have a conversation about this because this is not healthy. So I realized that my anger in the internal family systems type of therapy, it's like a firefighter. So it's there to protect your exiles, and your exiles can be the parts of you that feel abandoned and things like that. And that's really where mine was rooted. So every time that I would self abandon myself, when I would do something for the benefit of others while suppressing my own needs, my anger grew and grew and grew. And so now I kind of had this conversation of when it does pop up, how am I abandoning myself in this moment? What are my needs that aren't being met in this moment? And how can I express my needs in a constructive way to get my point across? Because anytime you meet someone with anger, you're screaming at them, or it doesn't even have to be that you're raising your voice, but you're using words that feel harmful to them. They're immediately going to shut down and they're not going to want to meet your needs. I shared a book with you, Speaking Peacefully, that I recently read, and it really talks about how to have these hard conversations with people about tough subjects. Do you notice physically in your body things that happen when you get angry? I know for me, my blood pressure rises, my face flushes. It's
Mhm.
flushed right now, but that's because I did a skin treatment.
Well, it doesn't look flushed.
And sometimes I cry.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely cry. I found this website on Psychology Today, and we can add the link in the show's description. But they stated that anger is a threat activated neurophysiological arousal response created when any type of threat triggers our brain, whether it's a true threat or not. If we take it as a threat and we become angry, our brain thinks it's a threat. And then our brain and our body work together to release adrenaline and cortisol. Our heart rate does increase, our blood pressure increases, our muscles tense up, leading to heightened and narrowed attention. Our facial expressions and our whole demeanor changes. We don't look very approachable, which comes off as a warning sign to people that we are angry. I think oftentimes, like I said earlier, we're unconsciously triggered from past trauma response, and that wound of being violated does come up. Sometimes we should be angry though. I think we need to note
Right.
that there's many times that our boundaries are crossed, physical, emotional boundaries are crossed, whether it's from family, our children, our coworkers, and we need to stop and say, okay, that's not okay. We should be angry right now, and we should not be being treated that way by other people. Earlier, when you said that you would get angry when you abandon yourself, I experienced that as well. Now, would you get angry at Would you get angry with yourself, or would you get angry with other people and resent them because you abandon yourself for them?
Yeah, I would reflect it on them and be angry with them when
Mhm.
really I wasn't standing up for myself and wasn't expressing my needs.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think there's also been this doing things because other people say this is the right way to do them or whatever it might be, this is what we need to do. And then so many times they would then say, "Oh, actually, no, that wasn't the right way. We need to do it this way or do it the way that you suggested in the first place." So now I'm standing in my power more and standing in knowing that I am a very intelligent person. And so when I believe something to be true, I'm going to stand in it unless there is proof that shows otherwise. And since I've been doing that so many times, I've had like just confirmation of yes, you are intelligent. You make smart decisions. You can
That's
make
right.
smart decisions. And it's really helped to relieve this like inner rage that was living inside me.
Yeah. Yeah, stand firm and how you feel and how you believe, and don't teeter off that just to please other people, and it's okay if they get angry with you.
Yep.
How do you handle people now getting angry with you when you stand firm in your boundaries?
I think it's different in different situations.
Mhm.
It depends on how threatened I feel. So when people get angry with me at work and they are in a place of authority, I start to be scared. Am I going to lose my job because I offended this person or because they're angry with me? Not that I've ever been fired and not that I'm not an excellent employee, but those are the thoughts that start to pop into my head. And then I start to get anxious. I if I'm ever in a conversation with someone when they are escalating, now I used to escalate right with those people,
Mhm.
and that didn't solve anything. Now I do start to recognize in other people when they start to show those expressions on their face, when they start to get, firmer in their voice, and I try to just remain very calm in that situation, not escalate with them, give them time to say everything they need to say, and then take a few more minutes and reflect on that before I respond. Because I know in those situations, I want to try to de escalate it rather than escalate with them. I think it's important to make a person who's angry feel like they're being listened to with also setting boundaries. So if someone is acting irate and, you know, calling you names or even being physically violent, obviously remove yourself from the situation. Set that boundary that this type of behavior will not be accepted. But if they're just truly expressing their anger, and it could be that they're yelling, it can be very frustrating. I had an incident where I was talking with someone that was very angry and, they were acting very much out of their ego. And I was
Mhm.
using, things you're taught in crucial conversation classes and then they got mad at me. Stop using your therapy talk on me.
Mhm.
And I can understand. And especially because that's not who I was before. I was the person that would escalate right with you, call you out your name, all the things.
Mhm.
So they were seeing something different at me and like, why are you acting this way? Don't talk to me like that. Don't
Yeah.
try to calm this situation down. We need to fight. And that was actually,
Mhm.
this is not a love language, but in my family unit growing up, I've even heard my mom say before, "Oh, that's just how we show each other we love each other by screaming at each other." And that
Absolutely
was how my
not.
family communicated. So imagine me growing up
Mhm.
thinking that. It's
Right.
been a lot of unlearning of that as well. What do you do when someone approaches you in anger?
I used to get very defensive, and people have fight or flight. Mine's firecracker flight or firecracker fight. Now, as I've grown and evolved as a person, I don't like that saying, "I match energies." No, I maintain
Mm-mm.
my own, and I've realized that, especially in the workplace, I think it's different, like, with my kids at home, I do try to maintain a calm energy for my household. Sometimes that's difficult as a parent when your children are experiencing intense emotions and being disrespectful and such. But in the workplace, especially, I realize that because we're both nurses, it is an intense job. It is difficult and trying to take care of people. It's stressful. People's lives are really on the line. So it's just an intense environment at times, and people may come off as they seem angry. Really, I've noticed that it's a lot of times anxiety, people's anxiety is portrayed as anger because they're out of their sense of control. So I've just
Mm,
realized maintaining my own calmness about myself and, like you said, truly listening to them. I've gotten good at that, realizing that it's not personal how they're treating you. It's not personal. It doesn't have anything to do with you because they can't control their emotions in that moment.
absolutely. I I used to, whenever I was in a partnership and my partner was, kind of being passive aggressive, like grumpy, something's wrong, but they're not saying anything.
Mhm.
I would always ask them, like, did I do something wrong? And always put it back on myself. There's this really interesting thing that Jordan did in our relationship, and I've adopted it. Whenever I would be passive aggressive or just be grumpy and not be my normal self, he would ask me, "Are you okay?" And at first I was like, because I was probably grumpy with him, right? And I'm like, "What do you mean, am I okay? You did this." Well, hello, say something, have a conversation. Don't just
Mhm.
be grumpy. So we use that a lot now when we notice in each other, like if one of the other is getting off and ask, "Are you okay?" Because it has everything to do with you. You might be upset because I did something, but you have to identify that and you have to communicate that to me, or else I can't do anything about it.
Right. And you have to know who you're talking to. Like, you're safe at home, you're safe with your husband. Just that simple, "Are you okay?" You guys can look at each other and kinda probably laugh about it now, like, "Okay, no, actually this and this and this," and you guys work through it well. I remember I was at work probably, I don't know, a year ago, and just working with another nurse that's difficult to work with, and she just kept kinda going off on me about how she felt, and I was very I stood firm. I knew I didn't do anything wrong. I was confident in how I performed my job that day, and she just wouldn't shut the fuck up, and I just looked at her and I said, "Is there anything else you'd like to express?" And instead of reacting with arguing her point that you're not gonna get through, just simply asking them that, if there's anything else they'd like to express, they kinda get taken back by it, that, "Okay, I don't have anything else to add to this conversation. Let's move on."
Mhm.
I have signs here that you may need to self-reflect on things that you choose to be angry about when you're truly not in danger, and I'd like you to add to them. If your instant reaction is just to be defensive during disagreements, every single time we've touched on that. If find yourself angry almost every single day and blame others for your stress and irritation, certainly start to look at yourself. Those small daily annoyances, like your kids not picking up after themselves, or I used to get super like irritated when people would drive too slow in front of me, and that's a problem. But that's really common. I've seen it in
Yeah. Oh,
myself
yeah.
and
I have had
others.
road rage for
Yeah.
sure.
I think when you tend to hold grudges for longer than 24 to 48 hours over disagreements with coworkers and your family, if it's still ruminating and you haven't had that conversation with them, try to have that conversation if you can't let it go, because then you just build up that resentment, which we've already touched on. When you are angry and you do start to have conversations with people, if it defaults to screaming and you're not even able to hear another person's perspective because you feel so violated, explore if you're overreacting, or maybe if that person is really portraying some malicious intent and you need to remove yourself from their life. I would say if you get upset with 3 or more people in a 24-hour period, I've definitely had to check myself, like, "Okay, I'm the common denominator here. All these people,
Yes.
it's not."
That's what I was
Yeah.
I was gonna say, check who's the common denominator there. Everyone's pissing you off, it might be you.
Yeah. You find yourself bitching to others daily about how upset you are and how other people irritate you so much. Your nervous system starts to feel dysregulated more oftentimes than none after your interactions with people. You have headaches, heart palpitations, anxiety, lack of sleep, just exhausted. And you spend a lot of time apologizing and mending after you calm back down and are able to reflect on your behavior. It's crucial to be able to self reflect, but implementing ways to stay calm before you have to apologize continuously over and over again, because there is going to come a time when those relationships are not able to be mended anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I think
That's
that,
for sure.
yeah, remember not to be too hard on yourself and just be thankful. Know that anger is there to protect you, but it can also be your worst enemy. You won't be able to avoid feeling angry all the time, but you can certainly work on controlling yourself when feeling triggered. And there are some ways that you're able to do that. When anger does surface, just try to take a couple deep breaths and take a couple moments to think how you want to respond instead of being so impulsive with responding. During those deep breaths, really try to become regulated and decide if you're being violated or if you're in danger, or if you just need to maybe tone it down on what strength you need to use to be assertive and get your needs met in that moment with that person. Choose how you want to respond. You're allowed to disagree without being so rigid and abrasive. I definitely need to work on that myself sometimes. I get angry and just go in on people. I'm getting better,
Same.
but yeah, that's been a struggle for me. And also understand what you can't change. There's many things in our lives that we have to tolerate, whether that's co-parenting with people we've had children with, our coworkers. At some point, you're going to have to decide how much energy you want to keep giving to these situations. You can't change people, you can't change their behavior, but you think the oldest saying, you can certainly change how you respond.
Yes, and that is a huge part, especially when we feel we're in a situation where we don't have any control to change anything, but we still have to remain in that situation. Like you mentioned with co-parenting,
Mhm.
could be your job. Yeah, you can change your job. I talked with someone recently who has had, 5 different jobs in the last couple years, and I was like, "Do you think that the common denominator is that currently the workforce is just
Mhm.
not what it used to be?" And that's where your frustration lies, and no matter if you jump from here to there, the same problems are still gonna show up, and you gotta control how you respond to them. For work, I think of, "Hey, this is I'm glad I get to pay my bills. What I can control, I'll try to contribute to, and what I can't, I gotta move on."
Yeah. Because if you can't remove yourself from the whole situation, you can't just remove yourself from your job, you know? But in in other moments, maybe like at home, you can remove yourself from that moment. "Hey, I'm really triggered by this. I need a minute to process how I feel. I don't wanna say anything that I'm going to regret and that we can't come back from. Can I please just have, an hour or 2 to have some time alone and create a conversation so we can create a healthy conversation?" Learning to observe my triggers is definitely practice, wouldn't you say? And
Oh,
then
yeah. It's practice, and you're gonna fail, and you gotta give yourself grace.
mhm, you really do. You have to learn how to channel that. You have to learn how to channel your anger when you feel it. You can't allow it to just come to the surface and explode like a volcano. You have to be able to regain control over yourself and know that you cannot control others. Of course, self-reflect when your anger is warranted. I in my last relationship, which was a whole thing, a whole mess, but I did have a notes section in my phone, and every time I became triggered, I started to write it down. And
Ooh.
I would go back And because I would just act on my trigger. And then but once I started doing that, I would go back and I would say, "Okay, at the end of the day, reading over my triggers or the end of the every couple days and I would say, "Okay, oh, that's not even something I'm mad at anymore. That's something I forgot about or this is something that's still at the surface that maybe I need to discuss."
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do need mood stabilizers. Sometimes we do need to find a spiritual practice if you don't believe in pharmaceutical medications. Maybe you need your blood drawn and you have a hormonal imbalance and that's something that you need to work on and then learn how to identify what calms you down. If it is just taking some deep breaths, going for a walk, journaling, weightlifting, being in the sun helps me so much. I feel so good after I get some vitamin D. And
Mhm.
just talking to close friends about it too. I know I mentioned like don't bitch earlier, but when you do have a lot of things on your mind, just having close friends and family or a therapist, it's good to vent.
Absolutely. I think we've given our audience some great tools to use. I think the biggest thing you can do is just be mindful and continuously practice it. Don't get down on yourself if you mess up because that's going to happen.
It is.
The best thing you can do is just keep trying.
That's right. And sometimes to preserve our peace, these people that make us angry, sometimes you do have to eliminate these people out of your life. And that's something that you have to decide for yourself. But when you do know you're overreacting and you have an anger problem, just apologize and just try to do better the next time you start to feel angry. We love you and we love that you've spent your Monday morning with us. And we're excited for you to hear from us next week.
See
Namaste.
you soon. Namaste.